Dimitrios Tsatiris, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Don, thank you for having me on the podcast. Doing well. How about yourself? How have you been?
I'm doing great. I'm just up here chilling out in the mountains on this wonderful Saturday, and you are located in Ohio, is that correct?
That is right. Northeast Ohio, indeed.
So, for the audience, I'd love it if you would introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you in your own words and what makes your work life balance different from other people in your chosen profession.
Yeah. So my name is Dimitrios Tsatiris. I'm a practicing board certified psychiatrist. I've been attending for about 12 years now. What makes my work unique is that I take care of physicians for a living. I work for a not-for-profit locally, the Akron Physician Wellness Initiative, and we take care of physicians and APPs in Northeast Ohio. So it's been a very rewarding journey. Like yourself, I'm also a book author. I enjoy writing for Psychology Today. So that's something that is meaningful to me. And I'm also a husband, father of two young children. They're turning 10 and 8 this summer. And I live 15 minutes away from my parents. I got to keep an eye on them. So, like many of your audience, I'm doing my best to keep up with competing work, family, and social responsibilities.
Yeah, we have a lot in common because we're similar training age, if you will. You know, the amount of time that we've been practicing. I think I'm like 15 years out of residency. And we also have similar age kids. My daughter is 10 and yours are 10 and 8. And we definitely share the authorship. And my first question for you is related to that. I'm wondering how you landed such an awesome gig with writing articles for Psychology Today, which is a very popular online magazine.
Yeah. So if we rewind the clock a little bit, it was maybe 2018, 2019 that I was starting to experience some burnout with work. And like many achievers, like many in your audience, we put our heads down, we achieve our goals, we build the practice, and then it's like, oh, I'm starting to feel some burnout here. Um, so I had to make some changes in my life. One of which was I started writing because that's a creative outlet for me and an emotional outlet. And once I started blogging and writing at that time, I got the opportunity to write for Psychology Today, and that's something that I do to this day. It's a great way for me to kind of refine my thinking and share those thoughts with other people and try to be helpful to them.
What is one of the common themes or maybe a couple common themes that you tend to write articles about there?
Yeah. So the blog is titled "Anxiety and Achievers," and one of the things that as achievers we're not the best at is setting boundaries. Right? We have a tendency to say yes, and we have a hard time saying no because of emotional forces like guilt or shame or people pleasing. Right? So one of the things that I talk about is setting boundaries. Other topics that we talk about are perfectionism as physicians, as achievers. We have a very narrow definition of success, but a very broad definition of failure, right? So we take failure
Mhm.
very personally. The slightest deviation from perfection, we kind of beat ourselves up, right? So perfectionism is another topic I talk about a lot. And then the final thing I talk about is having a healthy relationship with achievement. Sometimes as, again, physicians, as achievers, we become so obsessed with goal setting and goal attainment that we kind of miss the big picture. And I've seen so many docs make so many sacrifices to achieve goals, but then they sacrifice their loved ones and their health in that process. So what I talk about is having a healthy relationship with achievement by remembering that you are more than a physician. You are more than whatever your professional title is, and to integrate other parts of who you are in that definition.
Those are really important concepts. I'm sure that my audience can resonate with these. And I know that my coaching clients, who I'm often talking to about boundaries, can definitely relate. So we will link to your blog in the show notes as well. And then also tell me about the book that you recently wrote, because that was more about burnout, correct?
Yeah, definitely. So back in 2023, we presented at the American Psychiatric Association about our clinic and about our experience taking care of doctors. And there was an opportunity through that conference to sign a deal with a publisher, Taylor and Francis. So yeah, I mean, when you look at the data, you see that about half of doctors struggle with burnout, right? And the burnout is primarily due to systemic factors that take away our autonomy, that take away our ability to best care for patients, contributes to moral injury. But at the same time, as physicians, we are responsible for dealing with the hand that we're dealt, and we are responsible for making the best of a difficult situation. So once that opportunity arose, I wrote the book on burnout and how to rise above a broken healthcare system. Just like offer my thoughts on the topic, and having, working with physicians, I think it allowed me to kind of have a unique perspective on the topic.
Can you tell me a little bit about your personal burnout experience that you referred to back maybe, what, 6, 8 years ago?
Yeah, definitely. Like many docs, I put my head down and I thought that I would be happiest when I achieved professional goals like everyone else, right? You graduate residency, you become an attending, you build a practice like everyone else. And I noticed probably 5 years as an attending, I started to experience some burnout. And I'm like, oh, this is a red flag because if I'm starting to get burnout now, I can only imagine what that will be like in 15, 20 years down the road. So I knew that I had to make some fundamental changes in my life at that point. I integrated writing, and that was again a positive outlet for me. But also, I looked for opportunities as far as career change, right? So this clinic that I work for now, it opened in 2021, but I've heard rumblings about it during COVID in 2020. And I saw that they were starting with a therapist. And I knew that like they're going to need a physician. They're going to need a psychiatrist to provide psychiatric care to the patients. Many physicians want to work with a physician, right? Who's in the trenches with them. And I offered to work Friday afternoons. I'm like, let me just take the least desirable shift Friday afternoon. Let me get my foot in the door, see what it's like. And lo and behold, you fast forward 5, 6 years later, and that's my full-time gig. But the way I look at burnout is that it's a signal. It's a signal that something in your life has to change. And if you don't address the problem, the burnout won't go away. Yes, self-care is important, exercise is important. I do that religiously, eating healthy, all the techniques that we talk about as far as anxiety management. But anxiety and burnout are signals that there's something wrong with life. It might be something with family, something with work. And if the problem is not addressed, the burnout and the anxiety will continue to rear its ugly head.
What was the thing that you recognized in yourself? Was there like a particular thought pattern or something that was happening with you where you were like, okay, I think I'm developing burnout?
Yeah, I was not excited to go into work anymore. I started to
Mm.
have some Sunday scaries, and I was not looking forward to Monday morning. And that was a red flag. And I felt like I had achieved the goal of building the practice, and I was at the top level of productivity and bonusing and whatever, but I was not satisfied. I was not fulfilled. And I'm like, this is not going to be sustainable long term. When I was reflecting on my life back then, I was like, I was happier as a broke early career attending than somebody who had achieved financial goals and built a practice. I'm like, something's off here. So
Mm.
I sat with the discomfort. I listened to my body's signals. I felt the anxiety. I felt the burnout. And I used that as a signal to make changes and look for opportunities. So once I saw that opportunity, um, I took action, and it's a complete 180. It's amazing how like when you take action in life and you change where you are personally or professionally, it's amazing how the feelings change. Like Monday to me feels like every other day. It feels like a normal day. I look forward to going into work. I look forward to working with my dogs. I enjoy the back and forth with them. It's extremely stimulating to me and interesting. It adds purpose and meaning to my life. So it's amazing that once you take action and you address the problem at its root, how things change dramatically in one's life.
I love that you are really serving primarily us. I
Yeah.
didn't realize that about your practice, that you mainly were seeing APPs and physicians. And so, how different is that from what you were doing? Like before you had this period of burnout and you looked for other opportunities, were you doing like a standard private practice or academic practice?
Yeah. So before 2021, I was working for a hospital system as an employee, as a general psychiatrist in the outpatient setting. And I was lacking fulfillment. Something was missing. So this is a not-for-profit clinic that started in 2021 in Northeast Ohio, the Akron Physician Wellness Initiative. And I just wanted to get my foot in the door and see what it's like. And I thought to myself, worst case scenario, if I don't like it, I can always reverse course, right? But the idea of working with docs sounded really appealing to me. And, once you start working with a certain population, then you become an expert in that with that population, right? So I just started working on Friday afternoons, and then need arose, and it became a one full day, then two full days. And now fast forward, that's what I do for a living. I work for the not for profit, extremely rewarding work. And then I also coach physicians as well outside of that practice, outside of Ohio. But yeah, once you take action and once you dive into a subject matter, over time, the more you do something, the more you get the experience and expertise in that subject matter.
It's really interesting that you gradually worked into it and you thought, well, let me just see if I like this first. I think that's a great way to approach something. And one question I'm sure some people are having and that I'm thinking about is, were you looking at a huge pay cut going from doing something like working for a hospital system to working at a nonprofit?
Yeah, there's been about a 10 to 15% pay cut, but it's been worth it. It's been extremely
Yeah.
worth it when we look at the rate of return on happiness and presence with family. So uh, the one thing that I've figured out is that it's never enough. You know what I mean? Like the more you make, the more you want to make, and then you end up on the treadmill of always chasing more and more and more. And the one thing that I strive for is like, what is enough for my family and myself? So let my wife and I determine what is enough for us to take care of our family, save for the future, be able to retire one day. Like once you figure out what that is, then everything else is unnecessary, right? Making beyond that is unnecessary. So yeah, I was making more in the hospital setting, being in the top productivity and whatnot and bonusing, but I was also much more unhappy. So now I've cut back financially and work wise. I've narrowed my scope of practice. I'm only working with dogs. Yeah, I work for a not for profit and I took a 10 to 15% pay cut. But the rate of return, again, as far as fulfillment, meaning, purpose, happiness, it has made that worth it. And I would do that every single time.
100% on all that. I mean, definitely the non-monetary benefits are something that are just considerable. I mean, that I would argue that even a greater pay cut than that's not even that bad. Like, it would still potentially be worth it, right, for somebody. And also the idea of the never enough and the treadmill. I mean, I talk about that all the time. And I just did a solo cast episode
Mm.
on what is enough and grappling with that myself. And so I'll link that in the show notes for people who missed that. But those are very, very important ideas. And thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. And I agree with you. Like we live in society that's obsessed with more. And it's very
Mhm.
counterintuitive to say, I'm going to take a pay cut because it kind of it takes a shot at our ego, at our self-worth. Like many times we tie our worth to how much we make and our net worth. And, I've worked with people who make a ton more money than a bunch of doctors combined, and they were unhappy and miserable, right? So there's more to happiness than how much we make. There's a study out there that shows that even the majority of deca millionaires, the majority of those with a net worth of 10 million bucks, they still think they need more money to increase their level of happiness on a 1 to 10 scale. I can share that study with you if you want after the show.
Sure.
And that I saw that study. I'm like, this makes no sense. These are people with 10 million bucks and they still need more money to find happiness. So clearly that's not the answer. Yeah, we need to have enough to provide for our families, to save for the future. But at some point, I think we need to let go of the monetary chase of more in order to create the space to find more emotional fulfillment.
Yeah. I'm sure that this is a theme that comes up with your physician patients. What is another difference or maybe just something that you've noticed in treating primarily physicians and high achievers versus general population patients?
Yeah, in general, it takes a certain personality to say, you know what, I'm going to extend my years after college by 7 to 10 years and take on a quarter of a million in debt. Like you need a certain wiring for that, right? So in general, as doctors, we are very stoic. We are very self-reliant. If there's a problem, we don't ask for help. We try to figure it out ourselves. So in general, when docs come to see me, they're like their backs against the wall, like they've tried everything. And They don't come to me, let me just kind of enhance my life. They come to me because like they're feeling really down in the dumps because they've tried everything and they're
Mhm.
really beating themselves up because they can't figure it out. So we're perfectionists, right? We self-sacrifice. Hard work is synonymous with self-sacrifice for us. We're altruistic. We want to do good in the world. We want to leave this place a better, we want to leave the earth a better place than what it used to be. But those traits that we have that help us make it through med school and residency, they're also double-edged swords and they come at a cost to our mental health. An example is again, being self-reliant and stoic. Well, you're less likely to ask for help when you need it, right? Being a perfectionist, sure, you don't like mistakes, but when you make a mistake, you don't deal with it well. And perfectionism has higher rates of depression and anxiety compared to the general population. So these traits that we have, they're a double-edged sword. They help us achieve great things, but they also come to a detriment to our mental health.
Mhm. That is so true. I can definitely see that. At the same time, and I know that, you coach physicians and high achievers, and then you have this patient population that is like that. And I find that working with that group of people is very rewarding to me. It's like I'm able to get that helping aspect of what I like about my career in anesthesia, but in a different group of people. I mean, of course, anesthesia, there are all sorts of people that need anesthesia, and I get physicians too, but um I get a lot of reward out of helping the people that are like us. I mean, it's
Of
it's you and
course.
me too, right?
Of course, it feels good to help people that you are deeply connected with, right?
Yes.
When somebody talks to us about like what is it like to struggle with burnout from a professional standpoint, it's easy for us to connect with them. When they talk about the betrayal from medicine, you work so hard to get there, then you get there and it's not what you thought it was going to be because the system takes away your autonomy. It interferes with your ability to care for patients. We get it, right? So it makes sense that like we're able to connect and empathize with fellow physicians, right? On a deeper level.
This might be a difficult thing to distill, but I'm wondering if there is a particular few things that you are often commonly recommending to your physician patients or clients that come in and are feeling like they've tried everything and they are at their wits' end for figuring out how to feel better.
Yeah, it's hard to like stereotype all physicians, but the one thing that I've noticed is that we're hypercritical of ourselves. We have a very harsh inner critic. Again, we have a very narrow definition of success, very broad definition of failure. Like being a doctor doesn't feel like an achievement anymore, right? So the one thing I try to teach doctors is just give yourself grace, give yourself a little self-compassion. Like you're struggling, understandable. It's not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign that there's something wrong with you. Maybe we have to fine tune things a little bit, either the way that we're looking at things or what we're doing with life. But let's just kind of give ourselves a little grace as we embark on this journey. So that's like the one thing that I see a lot of. Um, the other thing is that as doctors, we tend to double down and work harder. And, whenever there's a problem, we tend to just try to work harder, um, dig our heels. And sometimes you got to back off to achieve a goal. I mean, think about like running a marathon or any race. Like if you run too hard, you're going to blow your cardio. If you're running a long race, like a marathon, right? And sometimes you want to slow it down a little bit, back off 10% to have a sustainable pace in life. And I look at life as a marathon. And what I try to teach doctors is like, it's okay to slow down a little bit, like 10, 20%. And believe it or not, that may help you get to your goals more efficiently and effectively versus more self deprivation, more lack of self care, right? Um, Another example is when we studied for our boards back in the day, like our steps. Sometimes, you study 14 hours and you learn less information than studying 10 hours, but a couple hours of self care. So those are a couple things with doctors. Again, giving yourself more grace and sometimes backing off can help you be more efficient and effective in your pursuits.
I find that self-compassion comes up frequently for my coaching clients, and I'm wondering if you have a particular go-to exercise or a way that you frame it that really they can understand because it is a difficult concept to grasp. It's like a practice that has to it
Mhm.
feels like that has to be honed over time. You don't just flip
Yeah.
a switch and you're
No.
self-compassionate.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. I completely agree with you, especially when you have a tough inner critic, a harsh inner critic. So the one thing that I teach doctors is like take yourself out of the situation and put a loved one in the situation. So for me, I'm in my 40s. I pretend that my son or daughter are in their 40s and I'm in my 70s.
Mm.
So I pretend that my son or daughter are going through the same situation that I am. Two people that I love the most on this planet, and my wife, of course, so I pretend that they're in that situation and they're dealing with this stressor dilemma. And how would I talk to them? How would I provide constructive criticism? What advice would I give them? Because, you want to give your kids the best advice possible and you want to give them fair advice. You don't want to like sugarcoat things because you don't want to like enable, but you don't want to be awfully critical either and like beat them up when they're down. Right. So how would I talk to them? So how I talk to them and this mental health exercise that I do is how I talk to myself in that same situation. Same language, same tone. Like, yeah, you can give yourself grace and also hold yourself accountable. I'd be like, I could have done things better. Yeah, I did A, I could have done B looking back at it. But we can learn from that mistake. We can learn from that judgment lapse, right? So that's the exercise that I do. And that's what I teach my fellow docs. Like, take yourself out of it because you're too subjectively involved and put somebody else that you really love and care for in that situation. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I love the way that you made it really granular and talked about your children because that's definitely the go-to for me. It would be like, what would I say to this person that I love so much and that you're trying to protect, but at the same time, you're wanting, like you said, to have a realistic view and to not sugarcoat things. And yeah, that's great advice. Going
Thank you.
back
Thank you.
to the idea of the burnout, I love that you said that there needs to be a balance between personal responsibility and taking action yourself, but then also recognizing that there are these systemic factors at play that are causing a lot of
Mhm.
this problem. What advice would you give to the people who are listening that feel like they're stuck, that feel like they're a victim, that feel like they just can't make a change to feel better?
Yeah. I think it's important that we distinguish between blame and responsibility, fault and responsibility, right? So the reason that physicians are suffering is because of the system. It's the system's fault that healthcare has become what it is because the system has prioritized profits and greed over, I think, physician wellness and patient care, right? And we've all had situations where we want to take care of the patient, but we can't because we have to deal with prior auths and all the, being double booked and not having enough time to take care of our patients. I can go on and on. At the same time, it is your responsibility as an individual to navigate the situation that you have been dealt in life, right? You are so responsible for navigating the situation and making the best of it or changing it, right? Because other people depend on you. Like, there's maybe spouses or partners at home, there's children at home, there's friends, there's family, there's your patients, there's people who depend on you, and you want to be the best version of yourself because they're your responsibility, right? Like if I'm coming home and I'm burned out and I'm stressed and I'm depressed and I have nothing left for my kids, well, I am flunking as a father and a husband here. And it is my responsibility to make sure that like I'm not giving so much to the system that I have nothing left for my loved ones. And I believe that there is always a solution. Now, again, it may not be an ideal solution. It may not be a convenient solution, but there's always a solution. Like personally, I took a 15% pay cut. That's what I chose to do to be more present at home and have much greater career fulfillment, which helps me be actually a better husband and father. So there is always a solution, but the brain doesn't like to look for solutions. The brain, its job is to protect you by creating anxiety, right? The brain will always tell you what you can't do. Don't drive. What if you get in an accident? Don't go on a plane. What if like the plane crashes? Don't go on vacation. What if like, you know, you lose your passport. I'm making stuff up, but so the brain will always say like, don't take a leap of faith. Never do that because it catastrophizes. It looks at the negative, it magnifies the negative, and it doesn't give you the complete picture.
Yeah, very true. I love that. It's a really good reminder too, because we all fall prey to that. I mean, there's the ability to look at things logically, but like that primitive brain that is in the scarcity safety mode is what predominates when
Yeah.
you're initially looking at an idea of changing or of whatever you're going to doing something new. So,
Yeah. You find growth in discomfort and that leap of faith. That's where growth happens. That's where opportunity is. And again, we hold on to our realities because there's comfort in the reality, there's comfort in the familiar, but we forget to see the other side of the coin, like the missed opportunity. There's a cost of not taking action. Like if I hadn't taken action back in 2020, somebody else would have taken the action. And I wouldn't have had that opportunity to go work for this not for profit, right? So that's the thing. You really want to like not fall prey to the worry thoughts, to the anxiety by trying to have a holistic picture of what's happening in life.
I love that you're doing this job. It's wonderful. I love that you're sharing your writing with the world. What are some of the other things, just personally, that you like to do with your family or in your free time?
Yeah. So I love being physically active. I work out 4 or 5 times a week. It's something that I really enjoy. It's a way to release the physical symptoms of anxiety and stress because anxiety is not just cognitive, it's also physical. And you can't outthink physical, right? So there's a reason I have to stay active or doing yard work, being outside. Looking forward to that this weekend. I love being engaged with my family and being involved in their activities. I love assistant coaching my son when he plays flag football or basketball. That's very meaningful to me. I love watching my daughter do her gymnastics. I just love being in the stands and watching her. I love hanging out with my wife, going for a walk, right? That stuff is very meaningful to me. So these are things that recharge my batteries as well.
The simple things. We have another thing in common. We both love the simple things. I could have
Yeah.
probably like recited almost all the same things that you just did. I love that.
Yeah. Like cutting grass and trimming bushes makes me happy. It's one of those things that just is so meaningful.
That's
Just
awesome.
being outside, doing yard work.
Well, Demetrios, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. Tell us where we can find out more about you. What's the best place to connect with you or learn more about your work?
Yeah, Don, thank you first of all for having me on your podcast. It's been great to see you at
Yeah.
conferences. Like we are around the same circles, right? So it's
Mhm.
been really gratifying to get to know you through that, and also to be on your podcast. So I'm on Instagram and I'm on X at Dr. Dimitrios, Dimitrios. I have a website, dimitriossatiris.com. My last name is Tsatiris, dimitriossatiris.com, where I post articles from my writing or different speeches and podcast appearances like this one.
All right, great. And I'll make sure to add links so that you don't have to stop and try to write down the spelling for that.
Eh,
Again, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Don. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too.